Hello and welcome to the Eating Disorder Therapist podcast. This is a podcast to help you find peace with food and overcome disordered eating. And I'm Harriet Frew, aka the Eating Disorder Therapist, and I'm so excited to share with you all kinds of stories, tips, information and guest interviews to help you on your journey in finding peace with food. So thank you so much for listening today. Now firstly, time for a short advertisement break. I can remember crying in the doctor's surgery 4 years into living with bulimia. I was desperate for help and wanted support to escape the torturous cycle of restriction, binge eating and purging. My face was swollen, my stomach ached, and I felt lonely and desperate. And I was told that the local eating disorder service had closed and there was no help available. I left dejected and lost. And it wasn't until 2 years later, when out in Australia, still struggling with bulimia, that I made the decision to support others in the way that I had not been supported myself. And I decided then that I would train as a counsellor and support others in eating disorder recovery. And at age 25 years old, I began this process. Starting in the NHS eating disorder service and in private practice later in my 20s, I was able to put my dream into a reality, seeing clients, families teaching, and in more recent years, social media, blogging, podcasting, training, and supervising counsellors, I continue to be incredibly passionate about my work. So my latest offering is my Breaking Free from Bulimia online course. So it's 12-step Breaking Free course, and it's packed full of valuable tools and strategies to help you break free. You'll start with understanding and making sense of your past and why you're struggling. You'll then work on motivation to change and root out the ambivalence and fear of letting go. You'll dive into the destructive impact of diet culture and get firmly in your own recovery lane. You'll practice regular eating and stabilizing blood sugar. You'll interrupt the binge and purge cycle. And with support, you'll introduce your old forbidden foods and practice self-compassion techniques to become kinder and supportive of yourself. You'll work on emotional eating and challenging your negative thoughts. And there's modules on finding your voice, becoming assertive, plus developing robust self-esteem and managing relapse with ease and continuing on the recovery road. 12 modules, self-paced, online, delivered in lecture and video content by me, Harriet Frew, expert by experience, having recovered from bulimia, having worked in the NHS and private practice with clients with eating disorders for 20 years. So step into freedom with food and living the life you want. It's only £111 and the link is in the show notes. No more restrictions, secret behaviours, shame and loneliness. Break free from bulimia today. Okay, so today I want to talk about 7 ways to improve and boost recovery motivation. Because I think this is something that many people struggle with. Many people want to let go of their eating disorder, but they really feel in two minds about it. So I want to really talk about this because ambivalence is such a normal and important part of the process. And what we need to do is learn to work through it, wrestle with that ambivalence, and this will actually help you to move to a place where you feel more motivated to recover. So, number 1 of 7 ways to boost recovery motivation is really accepting this ambivalence about change. So acceptance of the problem is an important part of change. And it can feel paradoxical because I think often as humans, we find it hugely challenging to accept where we are right now. We tend to use our willpower and emotionally kind of white knuckle it through change. But it never really works sustainably when we're just relying on that willpower and that kind of push. It doesn't really work for the long term. Now, Rolnick and Miller were pioneers in motivational interviewing. If you want to go and read their book, it's a huge, great manual. If you want to dive into motivational interviewing, it's a great place to start. But this was a therapeutic approach that was originally created for addiction support, so more around kind of alcohol, drug addiction, etc. But it helps clients resolve and explore ambivalence around change, and this is an important starting point for recovery. And this is very much used now in eating disorder recovery. And the new Maudsley animal model is very much rooted in motivational interviewing, but of course it uses the animal metaphors in a really lovely way to make some of these more complex sort of issues much easier to understand. So do go and have a Google of the new Maudsley method if you want to find out more about the animal model, because that's a great place as well, particularly if you're a carer supporting someone with an eating disorder. It's a great place to get some great tips on how to support someone in a motivational way. So work to accept that ambivalence around change is normal, and that you can then be more compassionate and understanding towards yourself, because your eating disorder has probably been a coping strategy for a while. And I think this is often confusing for us because we can think of all the different costs and cons of the eating disorder, and we often forget that actually the reason we have this eating disorder in the first place is because it's been a life raft, it's been safe, it's something to cling to. Now, obviously, it's a maladaptive way of coping. We don't want to be using it for the long term, ideally. But once we can really understand that it is a coping strategy, it helps us to shift towards a greater understanding and then being able to think about change more constructively. So how might an eating disorder be supporting you or helping you? So it might be giving you a sense of control, perhaps if life is feeling out of control and really overwhelming. It could be a way of dealing with difficult feelings, so distracting or numbing from these feelings. So maybe you've got issues going on in your romantic relationship or with family members or at work. I think relationship difficulties can often be quite intense and overwhelming. But if we focus on food and our body as a way to distract and numb from the feelings, then this can be kind of like a temporary coping strategy. It kind of takes us away from those painful things. Now, again, obviously, I'm not advocating this. This isn't a healthy coping strategy because ultimately you're going to create more problems through starving, binging, restricting, whatever you're doing, over exercising, and actually you're not actually solving the problems that are maybe going on in your relationships, the issues that need addressing. But if it all feels too much, an eating disorder can often be a way to try and deal with some of these difficult feelings. Maybe the eating disorder has become part of your identity. So maybe you identify as the person who has food issues, and that's sort of almost become something that people know you for. And maybe you look very healthy, and I'm saying look within inverted commas, maybe you look very kind of lean or muscular. You have a physique which is very sort of socially acceptable and supposedly demonstrates health, whereas actually behind closed doors, you're far from healthy because you're really restricting, you're binging, you're over-exercising, you're doing things that are really out of alignment with health. But that identity piece, other people kind of validating you, praising you, seeing you as a healthy person is kind of keeping you trapped in this place. Maybe it's a way of communicating to others. By losing weight, you're letting people know that you aren't coping right now, as maybe it feels too challenging to express through words. And I think this can be quite common as well. I don't think anyone intends to use an eating disorder as a coping strategy in this way, but I think when someone loses weight, people tend to step in, they want to help you, they realize that you may be struggling, and sometimes this might feel like the only way that you can communicate because you feel that people aren't listening to your words or perhaps taking you seriously in other ways when you try to communicate. It could be a way to try and boost self-esteem. In a culture dominated by wellness and dieting trends, if you're trying to control your food intake, you likely feel you're doing something right. You might feel that this is the one thing you can do well. Maybe others praise you. It feels morally good. And when things are going well and you're kind of restricting or whatever, you feel that sense of discipline and self-control. Now, of course, again, this is not a sustainable, healthy coping strategy. And often those periods of self-control are really counteracted with periods of feeling wildly out of control, and actually restriction or binging or over-exercising, these are not healthy coping strategies. But if you have very low self-esteem, if other areas of your life feel that they're not going well, focusing on food and body can feel like something that you can focus on. It can be a temporary boost to self-worth when other areas of life maybe feel chaotic or challenging. So wherever you are right now, accept this ambivalence, but know that you can learn to cope in healthier and more self-nourishing ways going forward. You can find fulfillment and purpose. You can be much more aligned with your deepest values, pursuing joy, contentment, love, meaning, connection, hobbies, etc. You can learn to tune into your body, feel your emotions, see them as a barometer that is guiding and helping you, taking care of yourself with healthy strategies. You can learn to communicate, talking to others in safe relationships, finding safe places. And you can have an identity as well, which is far more meaningful than one that is reliant on your body looking a certain way. So yes, you can, but by accepting this ambivalence, recognizing where you are right now, it can be one of the most helpful starting points for change. So number 2 of ways to boost recovery motivation. Think about your purpose. So your purpose on this earth is not to shrink your body. You have talents, passions, purpose, loves, things that light you up, things that interest you, things that get you into a flow state, even if right now you have forgotten these things. So what did you used to do? Think back to when you were at primary school. Now I know often we have lost who we are as teenagers, as adults, but sometimes when we look back to our earliest years, before we worried what the world thought about us, we were so much better at just getting on with what we love doing, being tuned into ourselves and just, being in the flow of life. And then of course we grow up, we learn that we get more attention or we have to please to be a certain way, and we often lose ourselves. And I think the whole kind of academic treadmill as well sometimes, for some people that works really well, for some people it doesn't work so well, and it can just feel like you have to go in a certain direction when you've really lost the essence almost of who you are. Now I know for myself, as a child, I used to love teaching, creating, organising, encouraging my younger sisters. Used to teach horse riding as a young teenager to little ones. Used to organise pony days where I had to plan out loads of quizzes and competitions and fun things for the people that were learning to ride. Now I was quite bossy, I think, but I also had a lot of enthusiasm. And I used to really enjoy directing my sisters in plays or organising obstacle courses or leading them in different ways. I was kind of quite a natural leader, but I really loved encouraging, supporting, teaching, inspiring people, really. That's what really lit me up. And in my business today, through all the different avenues, through podcasting, through training counsellors, through supporting clients, many of these skills come into play. And because of this as well, because I am doing things that I absolutely love, and I wouldn't have necessarily had to direct my skills towards therapy. I could have probably achieved this in many other ways. Like as a teenager, I really wanted to be a horse riding instructor. And I think I probably could have gone down that road and really had a lot of joy and fulfillment too. So we don't often have to be doing a specific thing, but it's trying to understand the skills, the talents, the things that really light us up. So today, I'm very aligned with my purpose of supporting, inspiring, helping others. I don't always get it right, but I do try to do my best. And my body image is far less important these days, as I have something much greater and much more fulfilling to focus on. So maybe for you, if you're listening, it's your creative side. Maybe you're arty or musical. Maybe you're good with numbers, or maybe you're a real empath with compassion for others. So if you've lost yourself and your confidence, think back to your early life. What did you love to do at primary school before people around you told you what you should enjoy doing? Before those pressures of conforming and fitting in truly took hold? Because this can often be the key to finding ourselves again. And if you're really off track, and you feel like you've gone down a road that is not aligned with you, it doesn't matter, okay? It's never too late. You can start to take baby steps back. Even if you're in a job that you completely hate, it's completely out of line with your values, maybe you can start a hobby or reconnect with something that you used to really love to do, because the baby steps can have such an impact. Okay, number 3, what else helps with working with motivation? So working on underlying trauma. So maybe you've experienced trauma, loss, toxicity, betrayal, a loss of your sense of self and worth. And it is a very real thing that life can be incredibly hard and challenging, and you may feel broken. Now, I know on my journey, I felt very broken in my 20s. I couldn't understand how I was going to find a way through and heal. I couldn't imagine letting go of my dad's opinion of me. I felt that his opinion of me would have to change for me to feel okay. I had no concept of what self-worth meant, and I was drawn repeatedly to toxic relationships where I relived the old dynamic over and over. And this is where I would almost unconsciously sort of seek out people who were a bit over controlling, because this felt very comfortable and familiar. I was very used to this dynamic. And then I would very much fall into a people-pleasing dynamic, trying to be the kind of good, perfect person. But this would work to begin with, and inwardly, over time, I developed a lot of resentment and anger towards that person. And this would invariably leak out in all kinds of passive aggressive ways. So I wasn't taking responsibility in my relationships, and I continually found myself back in the victim role. And this all really exacerbated like eating disorder symptoms as well, because of when you're not in healthy relationships and you're dealing with people pleasing and you're dealing with the buildup of anger and resentment and rage, etc., it does not put you in a good place at all. And an eating disorder can be a perfect storm, a perfect way to almost numb and distract from all these difficult feelings. So you can heal though, and you can, move through these things. You have to work on your trauma, and one day your greatest pain will be a memory and an integral part of your life tapestry. Now, for me today, I have healthy relationships. For me today, I've been recovered for 20 years from an eating disorder. For me today, I am living my purpose, and I feel on the whole in a place of peace. But this has taken time and energy and work and working through my trauma. And, to do this, we often might need therapy or coaching. We might need to do a course. We might need to read, to journal. We might need to go on retreats, do somatic work. We need to find our own way, maybe doing yoga. There's lots of different ways that you can heal. There is no one right way, but it's really important that we work through our trauma, that we can learn to kind of release it, to process it, to move to a place where we can actually be free of it. Okay, moving on. Next one, number 4, your future self. So your future self is unlikely to place so much value on weight or body shape. Your future self will probably look back wistfully at the decades past, recalling experiences, connections, adventures, and squeezing the very juice out of life. So when you look back, which memories are going to stand out for you? Now, when I look back on my life so far, the experiences that stand out always include deep connection and or a sharing experience with others. Those are the things that stand out. I'm not thinking, oh my goodness, I can remember when I reached X weight on the scales. That was the pinnacle of my life. Not at all. So things for me like being in the Blue Mountains in Australia with my boyfriend at the time, just some really special memories. Working on summer camp USA, sharing a cabin with my friend Helen, who remains a good friend today. We used to just talk into the early hours about all kinds of things. It was incredibly bonding, living in the middle of this forest in Connecticut. Lovely moments of like reading to my children when they were younger. I think of my twin boys, one sitting on each knee and reading like Julia Donaldson books and things like that. Just really special memories. Going out for days in London with my daughter, maybe going to watch Mamma Mia or another one of our favourite musicals, really kind of sharing and enjoying that time together. And another one is seeing a client shift, change and break through to a whole new level of awareness. So I've had many experiences of that, and it's incredibly rewarding. And this week even, enjoying High Rocks yesterday was full of energy and joy. My partner Gabe was amazing. He's someone who has done a lot of endurance training, and he was really patient and encouraging and supportive of me and kind of pulled me around. But the reason, the fact that we kind of went through that experience together has been really incredible, and definitely a memory that's in the bank and I'm going to look back on in the future. Okay, moving on. Number 5, nostalgia. So nostalgia of your past thinner physiques saved on your phone is distorted reality. So don't let your romantic emotional notions distort the cold, weak half-life that you suffered in the pursuit of thin. We often romanticize things as humans. Be radically honest with yourself about the very real costs. Now, so many of my clients struggle with this one. Most people have an image in their mind of a point in time when they were in a smaller body, and they really idealize this. So this memory is often nostalgically held up as a moment of perfection in time. Although in therapy, when we actually explore it and talk about it in more detail, they recognize it wasn't all roses, and actually it was truly unsustainable to stay at that particular place for their body. And it often required severe restriction, loads of over-exercise, not only of food, restriction of food, but of life in general. So as human beings, we are nostalgic creatures, and this can sometimes be detrimental. We find it hard to let go of the toxic partner, the job that isn't working out. We hold on to glimmers of memories of things when things were better. We find it hard to accept the true reality of a situation, and this is part of being human. But a radical acceptance of the reality of a situation can be incredibly helpful. If you can genuinely recognise the limitations of that time when you're restricting severely, it opens the door to letting go of unrealistic goals that set you up on a hamster wheel of endless chasing and never feeling enough. So number 6, really understand your personal pros of the eating disorder. So we've talked a bit about this earlier on in this episode, but it's really helpful for you to understand how the ED is helping you cope. Now, of course, for the long term, an eating disorder doesn't really have pros, because for the long term, it will impact you mentally and physically and is very, very damaging. But in the shorter term, it has probably been a coping strategy for you. It's probably kept you safe. It's probably been something to cling to when life has felt overwhelming and difficult. So be compassionate with yourself, really understand how it's helped you cope. And this helps open up a door to think about other more constructive and healthy and happier ways of coping. Now, you are resourceful and resilient, even if you don't feel it. You can find alternative ways to do things differently. And to do this, you might have to reach out for support if you feel stuck. But it is possible for you, okay? And I know sometimes when you have an eating disorder, you just feel like you can't see the wood for the trees, you can't see how you're ever going to recover. But it is possible for you, and having the hope and the desire for recovery seriously almost gets you halfway there, okay? Because I think so often we lose that hope, we lose that desire, and then we kind of give up and we become resigned and weary. When actually, when we're holding on to hope, it can open up doors. We are looking for those exits. We might have people we meet in our lives who can support us or offer us change, or we can talk to. There are opportunities out there for you to heal, okay? So believe you can do it. You're resourceful and resilient. You all have your own path to go on, but it is possible for you. Number 7, find a good quote to inspire you. Now, I like this one. Lewis Carroll said, "In the end, we only regret the chances we didn't take, the relationships we're afraid to have, and the decisions we waited too long to make." Now, we can spend our days, weeks, months, or years going through the motions of life, but never really living. And change can feel scary and overwhelming. It's okay, it's part of being human. We like the familiar. We don't like things that are different. We like to cling to what we know. But you only need to take the first step to get going. And you can do it, okay, however stuck you're feeling right now. So I'm going to read the quote again. Lewis Carroll said, "In the end, we only regret the chances we didn't take, the relationships we're afraid to have, and the decisions we waited too long to make." Okay, so don't keep putting it off. Take the first baby step today. You can change, okay? And embrace the ambivalence. You're never going to feel 100% ready. You're always probably going to feel ambivalent around change because the eating disorder is a coping strategy, but that is no reason for you not to take a step forward. Okay, so I hope you enjoyed this episode. If you're not following me already on Instagram, do seek me out, the eating disorder therapist _. And for further support with your relationship with food, do go to the eatingdisordertherapist.co.uk. If you're a therapist listening, you may want to check out my body image and eating disorder courses. Links in the show notes. You can either learn online with me on Zoom or online at your own pace. You may also be interested, if you're a client, potential client, to look at my Breaking Free from Bulimia and 10 Steps to Intuitive Eating courses. Again, links in the show notes, lots of videos, lecture content, a great way if you like online learning for you to get lots of skills and strategies and be supported by me, as and when you want to engage with that material. Okay, enjoy this podcast. I would be so grateful if you'd follow, rate and review, as it helps it reach so many more listeners. Thank you so much for listening today, and I look forward to sharing another podcast episode with you very soon.